Hi everyone. Today's video is very important for those of you who are thinking of going and conducting a qualitative research as part of their project. Today's video I will define the key characteristics that should be included or that define a qualitative research. If you think these are the characteristics which fulfill your research inquiry, then qualitative research methodology is for you. Welcome to Search Research with Dr. Sam, your online thesis guide and advisor. Today's focus is on the characteristics, and I will take up at least 15 characteristics that together make up a qualitative research inquiry. If this video starts to become long, then I will make it part 1 and then I will release part 2 because I want you to be able to understand each of these characteristics. My students tell me that the videos should not be too long because they find it boring. So I'm going to keep it short, maybe not more than 10 to 12 minutes, and then I will in part 2 discuss the other characteristics as well. Although I cannot claim that all these 15 characteristics that I plan to discuss are exclusively for qualitative. You may find that some overlap with quantitative as well. So I'm not making any claims here, but I'm only saying is that these are what popularly make up for a qualitative research inquiry. So the first characteristic, if your research inquiry is inductive in nature, then qualitative research methodology is for you. What do I mean by inductive? Inductive is as opposed to a deductive research inquiry. And I will take up very simple examples to explain what is inductive and what is deductive. Alright, so first understand deductive and then I will explain what is inductive. So a deductive research inquiry has, let's take a simple example. Alright, all men are loyal. Sam is a man, so Sam must be loyal. Alright, so what does this mean is that the first two have to be true for the third to be true. Now in this case, all men are loyal and Sam is a man has to be true. If both of them are true, then this is true as well. This is the assumption, the deductive inquiry or reasoning. This is our deductive reasoning. Alright, deduction is what detectives do, Sherlock Holmes, something like that. So as opposed, what is inductive? Inductive means that, let's say I have a bowl full of silver spoons, right? I take out, or not bowl full of silver spoons, let's say a bowl full of spoons. All right, so I should not say silver spoons, I'm giving away the ending here. So I take out one, it's a silver spoon. I take out two, or the second one, it's a silver as well. So then rest must be silver as well. That is an inductive research inquiry. So what do we do and how can we put this in this context? That you take a group of people, you study them, and by studying their characteristics and how they behave, you assume this is what the larger population of the same group of people must be behaving. So if that is the purpose, that is what you are trying to do, then qualitative research is for you. The second characteristics of qualitative research is that it centers around, the central problem is always around identifying how people interact with their world, what they do, and then to determine how they experience and understand the world, how they feel, what they believe, how they explain structure and relationships and some segments of their existence. You are trying to understand how people think, how they behave, what they do. Alright, so let's take an example. We always try to understand using examples because that makes our understanding easy, and we should take examples which are simple. In my last video, I took up a few theoretical examples and my students said, it's very theoretical, we can read that in book, can you simplify it for us? So in today's example, let's say you are trying to find out why people prefer to order food online. Alright, and this is you are trying to find out, and now you are trying to investigate why they do that. Alright, is it laziness? Is it because they have apps, or was it there before as well when there was food delivery through telephone? What has changed, or has anything changed or not? You are trying to understand the behavior of the people, and that is your focus. Your focus is not so much on the numbers and statistics. You are trying to understand the behavior of the people, what they do and why they do it. The third aspect of qualitative research is that the interviews and various forms of observation are the common means of data collection, though they are sometimes supplemented by the collection of documents. But you will always see a qualitative researcher is involved in focus groups. Alright, they could be individual interviews, it could be just pure observation of the situation, field notes. This is what, because these are the documents, this is the data that provides them with an understanding of how people behave and why they do so. Alright, not so much as numbers and statistics and all that. Number 4, data mostly takes the form of words, and this is a very popular notion, and it happens so because the researcher is collecting field notes. When he or she is in field, she is collecting field notes. The data has interview transcripts which need to be transcribed. It's a long process, you know, it's not an easy process of transcribing interview data. It's a time consuming process, and quantities, frequency and graphic representation is also used. So you have all this textual and graphical data, and that's why a lot of people actually shy away from qualitative, although they feel it might be the easier path to go, especially those people who do not like numbers, who do not understand statistical analysis. They kind of shy away from quantitative and they gravitate towards the qualitative. But qualitative research data analysis is a lot of work, and if you do not have the expertise, you may have to outsource it, but you have to conduct most of the data analysis. So because it takes up all this, data normally takes form of words, in comparison to what? In comparison to quantitative, which is mainly with numbers. So what do quantitative research show us? It shows us something like correlation, right? We have correlation analysis. So numbers do not dictate the data here. It's the notes, the field work, the observation checklist, so on and so forth. Number 5, fifth characteristics. It is common for reports of qualitative research to contain detailed description of participants. This is very important. A big flaw that normally occurs in qualitative research, and examiners point it out to many students, is that there is not detailed description of participants. Qualitative research needs to contain detailed description of your research participants, and also both the physical and social structures of the context in which the study took place. What does that mean? You need to describe your research participants. For example, if you are talking about nurses, who are these nurses? Their age, sex, experience, background, because you are trying to explain to your readers about why a group of people behave in a certain way. To do that, you have to explain in detail who are these people you are talking about. Can generalization be made or not? So the description of the research participants will give the examiners and the viewers a good idea of whether who this sample is. Why should they believe your research? If you are claiming to be generalizable, why should they believe you? So you need to give as much detail as you can about the nurses. Also about the place where you collected the data, or the context in which the study took place. Did the study take place in a city or in a rural area? Or what was the setting of the workplace? You know, which country is it situated? Did you observe only one workplace or multiple workplace? So on and so forth. So you have to completely describe the context in which you conducted the experiment or conducted the observation. Alright, so if you are talking about the mental health of nurses, in hospitals, all right, that will be different. Mental health of nurses in hospital will be different versus mental health at let's say where the nurses go to battlegrounds, all right, where battle is taking place. So you cannot say that I collected data about mental health about nurses in hospitals and I feel that nurses do not suffer from mental health issues. That would be wrong. But if you describe the context and you tell them that this is where I did the experiment, this is where I did the study, and this is what it is applicable to, then the readers, the examiners, the viewers will believe it and understand it. Point number 6, and I will stop at point number 8 because the video is becoming a bit long, and then I will continue in part 2. In point number 6 is that in many forms of qualitative research, the investigator collects the data in the field, not all the time, but most of the time, and the place where the behaviors of interest naturally occur. Now, this is also most of the time. Why? Because the investigator wants to observe the behavior of the research participants, right? It is the behavior of the research participants that basically gives him or her the data that they require. All right, how they behave, why they are behaving like that, so that is required for the investigator to collect the data in the field, whether it is interviews, whether it's observations, whether it's recordings, watching them at work. The investigator is most or less present as a participant. Now you might say, when is an investigator not present? Many a times in quantitative research, say you are distributing a survey questionnaire, many a times the researcher is not present there. They distribute their survey forms, either they could do it online or through someone else, but the researcher may not be visible or may not be seen by the research participants. So but here in qualitative, the investigator kind of has to be, or the researcher has to be part of the data collection team. He has to be there. All right. Point number 7, qualitative research designs frequently involve collection of data from different sources, sometimes by means of even different methods. All right, within a setting for the explicit purpose of cross-checking information, something called, I have explained this in my previous videos, triangulation of data. Triangulation of data is normally commonly used in most of the research, but increasingly used in qualitative research, because inspection of such data sets and subsequent follow-up where discrepancies appear make this a primary means of establishing the truthfulness of sources. You will be credible if you employ the triangulation, credible data. So what you claim to find, if you are finding it through interviews or focus groups, observations, field notes, recordings. So the more the different sources of data are used to confirm or contradict, don't always think that you are trying to confirm. Confirm is of course works very well ideally, but even if you use it to contradict it, that might be fantastic as well. So even if your research says that, through my observations, field notes and recordings, I observed that the use of a lady instructor works for female students. All right, they learn better. If a lady instructor is there, female students learn better. However, if your focus groups and interviews reveal that is not the case, the students don't care, that is fine as well. Why not? You are contradicting your own research. You are saying that this was a contradiction, but you are highlighting it yourself instead of somebody else highlighting it. And if you describe the context, if you describe the reasoning behind it, that's fantastic research as well. Don't always think you have to try and prove your point, even if you contradict your point. But if you do it honestly, then also your data is considered credible. It's considered triangulation of data. You did everything you could to find out why a certain phenomena works in a way it does. For part 1, let's finish at point 8 here, and then in part 2 I will continue with the rest of the points. So it is very rare for a qualitative researcher to introduce a deliberate intervention in the field of study. I will explain this simply. I'll use a very simple example and I'll use. For the most part, investigators try to be non-intrusive, reducing the causes of participant reactivity to the smallest possible number. The exception here, of course, is participatory action research, studies in which the investigator plays an active role. So let me explain this very simply. All right. In qualitative research, you are trying to understand the behavior of your research participants. You are under certain setting, certain conditions. You are not trying to see how they would behave if I introduce a new change or not. All right. So let's say you have found out that nurses work from 9 to 5 and hence they are overworked. Now these are the line of thought. So you are just observing the nurses, what they do from 9 to 5, why they are overworked. Maybe it has nothing to do with 9 to 5. Maybe it is a job stress. All right. But what you will never do in a qualitative research is introduce a lunch break or multiple tea breaks. No, you will not create an intervention. This is a intervention. When you try to introduce a change, that is not your purpose as a qualitative researcher. Your purpose is purely to observe and understand why things work the way they work or why they don't work the way they don't work. Not to create an intervention and study the effect. That is action research. I have explained it in my previous video. So these are the 8 key points, and then in my next video, part 2, I will discuss point number 9 to 15 with simple examples so that you understand what makes up for a qualitative research and whether this research is for your project or not. See you soon with my next video, and I hope you like it.